Thrand here, and I'm here with a reply to Scholagladiatoria, or Matt Easton. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I noticed the other day on a feed, an older video popped up, I guess about 11 months ago. It was called Big Weapons Why. Matt Easton held up a Sudanese leaf-shaped spear, very much like this Iron Age Celtic spear. And he talked about the big broad blade, and he didn't think it was necessary at any given time to have that broad a blade on a spear, and that it had no true purpose other than for show or being prestigious or what have you. Well, honestly, I thought he watched our channel, and we've done a lot of testing with broad-bladed weapons, and especially like this Celtic spearhead, a large leaf-shaped blade. And our conclusion was it did have purpose. The purpose is a larger wound channel. Just like when we did ancient arrows, we compared stick arrows that Mythbusters had said were just as effective as actual flint-nabbed arrowheads. We concluded they weren't. The flint-nabbed arrowheads would cause the animal to bleed more quickly, rapidly, and since the animal can't pull it out, the animal would bleed out, you'd be able to follow the blood trail, and the animal would die quickly. With a stick arrow, you might shoot the animal and he'd run for miles, never pull it out, you'd never find him, you might die days later of an infection because it would plug the hole, unless it festered out. But anyway, humans, on the other hand, yes, a piercing, a smaller piercing will kill them. It doesn't have to be that wide. But then again, why would you want this? A larger wound channel, we're going to test that today. This is a Viking Age spear. This is Iron and Steel Age. Basically, it's the Steel Age. They went to something like this. Why? I'll tell you why. Armor, being able to get into niches, the functionality of not worrying about such a broad blade and it not hanging up on anything, something like this. Yes, it can pierce deeper in mail and so on, because if it punctures in, even this pierced mail, we went in a good ways in the mail after breaking a ring or two by spreading it and going in with this spear. But one of the advantages is a lot of times they'd have a croc spiat, and a larger, broader blade on these as well. What would that be used for? That was used to hook shields with. It hooked shields very well. The blade pierced into niches easier, and pierced armor easier due to the taper. And we see that early in the same thing with a leaf-shaped head with a spine, just like this one, which is usually hollow so the wood can come up through it. You see the same thing in Neil Burridge's Bronze Age spear, Middle Bronze Age spear. Same shape, but the difference is this is broader, this is more narrow. Why? They wore a lot of bronze plate during this time period. It's like the time of Achilles, people wearing bronze cuirasses and breastplates and helmets. So of course, the spearheads got smaller. Same shape. If you really look at it, this Viking spear is not a croc spiat, it's very close as well. But this blade here is very similar to a later century. This came from Andreas Knoll. This is more of a Renaissance blade. This is very much the same shape, a leaf-shaped spear. It's not sharp. I need to sharpen it. I'm going to be testing it later. No ridge, because it doesn't need it. It doesn't need a ridge down the middle to actually reinforce it. But these were used to stop people from boarding ships with long poles. But one of the main purposes, I think, is like a boar spear is a big ring. A big broad blade like this will not over-penetrate. It'll penetrate so far, but not too far. Something like this could over-penetrate. Now let's talk about something out of a saga. The Thrand and Kati saga. There's a man who gets impaled with a two-handed thrust. It goes clean into him and almost out his back. He decides to run up the shaft to take the man out that thrust him and cleaves him with his weapon, killing him. So when he does this, you got to think about it. In a battle and no pain and being on adrenaline, knowing that you were already dead, you would not want this man running up with that in his mind to take you with him and killing you. Something like this, I don't think that would happen. It's going to go in so far, and you're not going to want to run up this unless it's already impaled you, and I doubt this is going to come out the backside. So anyway, let's go ahead and do some testing and check this out, but that's my conclusion, the same as Roland Warzeka has said, broad-bladed weapons, if you're fighting people that are lightly armored, like the Sudanese spear, I don't think they were known for their armor. The broader blade could be an advantage.
Bleeding very fast?
Not too fast. Very tough material. Small wound, small bleed. You see, it's barely trickling out and barely going down. Okay, the cap is on quite tightly. This is keeping it from flowing out like blood would. I'm going to take the cap off to increase the blood flow and see how fast it's going. Now that's the actual blood loss from that wound. And yes, the body would try to seal it up, and yes, you would have blood pumping, you know, pretty much like this, shooting it out. But that's the bleed. It'd be easier to stop the smaller hole. Yes, it went the full length of the blade. Let's go ahead and try the other one. Take spearhead. A little bit of a difference. Shall we increase the blood flow?
See how long it takes till he doesn't have no more blood.
I would say that's a bigger wound channel.
Yeah.
Bigger wound channel, quicker kill. The Celts must have loved it with the lightly armored opponents. If you were fighting levies or other unarmored people, great. No over penetration. Not too shabby. But remember, we have the cap off already and the holes on the other side. I just want to see how much penetration we get. It seems like the shaft does keep it from going too deep, which is a good thing, but I do know it's possible to run up the shaft due to these sagas and stories. So, and not all spear holes were the same size as this one. Some of them were much thinner and narrower. Still, not a bad wound, and we did make it all the way up to the socket. Also demonstrated that near misses with this broad of a spear, if they were to come by the throat and come in close on an unarmored opponent, it could cut the arteries in the neck and kill the man without even hitting with the point. We've tested that. Yes, if it's got a strong enough socket, it could be used for hacking or draw cuts and push cuts. Most unlikely that was done a lot, but it could have been done, and the broader blade would aid in that. Plus, in the Iron Age, it helped reinforce the spear itself. Not only the ridge down the middle that might be hollow filled with wood, as in the bronze one here. This one's relatively solid. It's a modern reproduction and hardened. We've actually driven this into plate armor a good distance. After a certain point, you're only going to get so much penetration into armor, and it's going to compress, like let's say mail. You're usually not going to impale it. Very often you hear in the sagas that the guy got hit, but it didn't go that deep. But in this case, I would say this would probably be better against mail. But this could be used against it. The Celts did have mail, but only the hierarchy would have it. A lot of people wouldn't even be able to afford armor. So something like this would be a devastating weapon on the field during the Iron Age. And I think that's what the Sudanese were doing. They were more lightly armored. And I think that they saw an advantage in the broader blade, because the wider wound channel, but quicker blood loss, and taking people off the field in a more expedient manner than maybe a smaller stab and wound that only went in so far, and the guy be able to live longer. Because we hear accounts in medieval text of knights who were stabbed, they were thrusted, and it leaked out like a spigot or a cock on a big keg of ale or something. The blood came out. They managed to stick something in there, stop the bleeding, and continue fighting, and didn't even die. So the bigger wound, I think, would help aid in the death of your opponent. Anyway, that's my conclusion. I hope you've enjoyed our video today in the testing deep, which is a good thing, but I do know it's possible to run up the shaft due to these sagas and stories. So, and not all spear holes were the same size as this one. Some of them were much thinner and narrower. Still, not a bad wound, and we did make it all the way up to the socket.
Okay, now you can go check it out now.
The other one was much more devastating.
Sorry, the little birthday boy wants to check what Daddy's doing. Now, if you only put sugar in there, he'd think it was a punch bowl.
For his birthday. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and farewell.